right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at the Volume. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week so far. Just got a quick show for you today. We're just going to do a deep dive into the Los Angeles Lakers, who after their 10-4 start are just 2-5 in their last 7 games as they're tumbling down the Western Conference standings. LeBron James is playing the worst stretch of basketball that he's played in over 2 decades. We're going to do a deep dive into all of the issues that are going wrong for the Lakers and some specific things to keep an eye on moving forward this season. How much of this is circumstantial and how much of this is the reality of their roster. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. Don't forget we have new social media feeds on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for the Hoops Tonight channel, where we're releasing more content, so make sure you guys follow there. And then keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments. We're going to be recording a mailbag in the Friday show later this week. All right, let's talk some basketball. So before we get into the Lakers, 2 things. First of all, if you're expecting me to come on here and talk about how I was wrong about the Lakers, that's not going to happen. All I said before the year is that I thought they were a good team, but that they were not a top-tier championship contender, that they needed a trade if they wanted to contend for a championship. But I said that I thought they'd win 50 games or so, assuming relative good health for LeBron and AD. So if you're expecting me to come on here because they're 1/4 of the way through the season and they have a 47 win pace instead of a 50 win pace, and just admit that I was wrong, I'm just not going to do that. I'll freely admit when I'm wrong about the Lakers. I'm just not there yet. I would even agree with some of the Lakers detractors out there who say that they're not as good as their record. I agree, they're not as good as their record. But I still feel more or less the same way about this team as I did before the season. We'll talk more about why here in a bit. Secondly, if you're expecting me to come on here and say LeBron is finally washed, I'm just not going to. Yeah, he's playing the worst extended stretch of basketball since his rookie year, which is over 20 years ago. Yes, it's actively hurting the Lakers, and we're going to talk about why. But I still don't think he's done. And the funniest thing about it is most of the people that are out there saying stuff about LeBron finally being done are the same people who were wrong last year and the year before and the year before that and the year before that and the year before that. Those people are shameless. They're just, you don't get to just say a guy's washed every single year, be wrong for a half decade, and then finally take a victory lap when you're right. So when that does happen, keep an eye out for that sort of thing. But I'm not here to bury the Lakers. I'm not here to bury LeBron. I'm here to talk some basketball. If you guys want to get into some basketball, some of the specific reasons why the Lakers are struggling, you've come to the right place. Let's go ahead and get into it. So first of all, the numbers. The Lakers started 10-4. They were 4th in offense, 25th in defense, 24th in rebounding, 29th in opponent fast break points scored per game. Since then, they're 2-5. They're still 22nd in defense. They're still 27th in rebounding. They're still 23rd in opponent fast break points scored over that span. But they've dropped from 4th in offense during the 10-4 start to 28th in offense during the 2-5 stretch since. Those of you guys who remember my season preview with the Lakers and just in general have watched me talk about the Lakers over the last couple of years, my main point of optimism with this team is that they are an elite offense. And with exception of this 2-5 stretch, since January, they have been a top 5 offense. They were top 5 offense to end the year last year over the second half of the season. They were top 5 offense to start this year over the first 14 games. The offensive end is where things have fallen apart. Now, before we get into the offense, I do want to bring just a slight silver lining here. Those of you guys who listened to the post-game presser with LeBron James yesterday after the Lakers got blown out by the Timberwolves, he talked about how the Lakers have been working really hard behind the scenes on their defense. Specifically, a lot of film sessions, a lot of discussion, changes in scheme, changes in roles, things along those lines. And it has had some positive returns. LeBron talked about that. One of the things he said in the post-game presser is like, we spent some time working on our defense. We kind of rectified it a bit. Now we need to work on our offense. And he's right. In the first 17 games for the Lakers this year, they were 27th in defensive rating, 26th in defensive rebound percentage. In the Lakers' last 4 games against San Antonio, Oklahoma City, Utah, and Minnesota, they're 10th in defensive rating and 6th in defensive rebounding. And it matches up with the eye test. I don't think they're a top 10 defense. They also played some limited offenses during that stretch. But overall, I thought the San Antonio and OKC games were the best stretch of defense this team has played all year. And I thought they were pretty good in the first half against Minnesota. And in general, they're competing a lot better on the defensive glass, which is such an important part of the scheme that they're playing. You saw it a lot against Minnesota again last night. Like when the Lakers are solving their problems by allowing AD to switch ball screens, that puts AD on the perimeter guarding ball handlers. When those guys miss shots or when they move away and somebody else misses a shot, suddenly the guy AD was guarding underneath the basket is pinned against a smaller guard and able to get a bunch of offensive rebounds, which puts a lot of pressure on the team to crash around to get defensive rebounds. They have been doing better. So again, there's a tiny little silver lining in the 2-5 start, which is that the Lakers looked like a pretty unserious defense and defensive rebounding team to start the year. They look much more like at least a serious defense and a serious defensive rebounding team in the last week or so. Do I think they're going to be an elite defense? No. But again, this is not the pathway for this team. The pathway for this team is top 5 offense, right around 15th in defense. That's where they need to get. And the only way you're going to get there is through playing serious defense. And they've been playing some serious defense. So I want to at least shine a little bit of a light on that. But the offense has completely fallen off of a cliff. So let's get into the reasons why. First of all, the Lakers shifted from playing more through AD to playing more through LeBron. Here's some crazy stats for you. During the 10-4 start, when the Lakers were 4th in offense, AD had a 31.2% usage rate, and LeBron James had a 26.4% usage rate. During the 2-5 stretch since, when they're 28th in offense, AD's usage rate has dropped to 26.4%, and LeBron's has risen to 30.5%. So they went from AD having the usage of a typical lead superstar and LeBron having the usage of a typical secondary star to swapping those roles. And LeBron's doing more of the offensive lift, right? Here's the problem, though. During the stretch where AD was kind of the primary superstar, he averaged 31 points on 65% true shooting. During this stretch, the 7-game stretch where LeBron is more involved, 19 points per game, 5 turnovers per game, just 48% in true shooting. In the last 6 games, just 17 points per game, 44% true shooting. Now, before we get into the details with LeBron, it is a little more complicated than that. Part of that shift back towards fixing the defensive end has caused Anthony Davis to spend more energy on the defensive end. They've also faced some teams with really athletic guards, and Austin and D'Lo have missed a couple of games, 3, I think, between the two of them. So if you're facing matchups that kind of make life harder for Austin and D'Lo, and Austin and D'Lo miss time, and AD is shifting more of his energy towards the defensive end, who's the natural guy who's going to step in and handle more ball handling in that situation? LeBron James. And he's been bad. And so the offense has fallen apart. So let's dig into how LeBron has been bad. Physically, I don't think he looks that different than he did last year. I'd argue he's a little less spry, not as engaged in the half court, not as many possessions where it feels like he really gets ahead of steam, right? But not so much that he should be this bad. So let's look at the shooting percentages. In LeBron's last 6 games, he's at 17 points per game on 44% true shooting. Where have the misses been? He's 3 for 30 on threes. And he had been lights out on those for over a year. And he's just ice cold right now. The Minnesota game in particular, most of his misses from 3 are on the outside of the rim. That's always a dead giveaway. Like Dalton Connect, for instance, had a rough shooting night last night. The Dalton Connect misses, they were rattling in the rim and popping out. LeBron was it's wide left and just carroting off the side of the rim. He's missing bad right now. He's in one of the worst shooting slumps I've seen him be in. It's not pretty. I think he's missed 19 consecutive threes, right? And that, to be clear, that generally affects other parts of your game, but we'll get into that in a minute. He's 11 for 23 from the mid-range, which is actually pretty good. That's 48%. That's pretty far above league average. He's fine there, right? 7 for 20 on shots in the paint, but outside the restricted area. These are your short-range touch shots. He was 42% on those last year. So down a little bit, but he makes 8 for 20 instead of 7 for 20, and suddenly he's at 40%. So not really much of a factor there. He's 22 for 35 in the restricted area. That's 63% on 6 attempts per game. Now, last year, he was at 8 attempts per game in the restricted area, 73%. So 10% better and about 33% more volume increase, right? So he's down a good amount at the rim. But I actually do think that has more to do with his jump shot than it does with his age. When you go through a shooting slump like LeBron is in, it makes the game so much harder. Guys don't close out on you as hard as they usually do. They don't pressure you as much. That makes it harder for you to get downhill. Not to mention the mental aspect, like when you're not making shots, you start to lose confidence. That causes you to try to force the issue a little bit. I saw a lot of that last night against Minnesota, where it felt like LeBron was trying to like force his way into a rhythm. I would actually argue his jumper being off is playing a much bigger role in this struggle for LeBron than his age is. Then there's the issue that with the turnovers, right? Some of that's related to his shooting too. Just to put it really simply, the less effective LeBron is as a jump shooter, the harder it is for him to get to the rim. The harder it is for LeBron to get to the rim when he's also in a shooting slump, the less effective overall he is as a scorer. The less effective LeBron is overall as a scorer, the less the defense is going to overplay him. The less the defense is going to overplay him, the harder it's going to be for him to find those passing windows, right? Those windows get tighter. Some of it's also general focus. LeBron has been having 2 or 3 like really head-scratching turnovers per game, where he's just clearly not as focused as he needs to be. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it's the mental aspect too. As you lose your confidence, you start to try to force things a little bit. You probably have heard LeBron talk a lot in his post-game pressers in the last week about rhythm. It's kind of like a mythological basketball concept, but it's real. Talk to any basketball player, anybody who played at a real level, they will tell you it's real. And like when you have... There's a bunch of different ways that people refer to it, right? Like I've heard rhythm, I've heard confidence, I've heard verve, I've heard flow. You know, it's like your mojo as a basketball player. There's a lot of different ways to refer to it, but all it is basically is that whenever you're playing good basketball, it tends to feed on itself and make you play even more good basketball. When you play bad basketball, it has a tendency to feed on itself and you play worse basketball. I'll give you an example. If you're playing good basketball, like if LeBron comes out in the game tomorrow night, I think it's in Miami or Atlanta, I can't remember exactly where it is. But when he goes out on the road in his next game, if he comes out and he hits a couple of above the break threes early in the game, suddenly he's going to feel more confident, right? Let's say that he catches on the wing after that and he pump fakes and the dude chases him off the line because he just made 2 and he drives. And when he drives, he drops it off to Anthony Davis and Anthony Davis gets a dunk. Now LeBron's starting to feel himself a little bit. He's starting to feel good. Let's say he goes out on the other end. Then he like a low man rotation where maybe if he's not in as much of a groove, he's less willing to make that rotation. But when he's feeling good about himself and he's feeling like I'm having a great game right now, he might make a much greater effort on a low man rotation and block like Bam Adebayo on a rim finish or something. And then suddenly he's bringing the ball up the floor in transition and he's spraying it out to a shooter. And it's like, it just kind of gains this momentum and it just turns into this like, it just turns into this runaway train in a good way. And the exact same thing can happen in a negative way when things are not going your way. Like a lot of times, like when your shot's not falling, is also when you start to force some bad passes. Is also when you start to get discouraged and not sprint back in transition. Is also when you start to lose that confidence and energy that drives you to make those extra efforts and extra intentional plays on the defensive end of the floor. It all kind of feeds into itself. And LeBron right now is just in a really, really bad place as a basketball player. He's not doing anything really that well. He's been okay on the defensive end and rebounding over the course of the last week like the rest of the team has been, but I even saw a lot of possessions last night where it's like, okay, you're on an island with Mike Conley and he's just going right around you. Like, slide those feet, man. I mean, I know you're old, but so is he. You know what I mean? Like, he can be better on that end too. It's just he's in a really bad place, and so he's going to have to find his way out of it. I do think his head is in the right place. I think it was Dave McMenamin last night asked him, like, hey, when you're in a struggle like this, like, what do you do? And LeBron had a lightning quick answer. And it's an answer that every young basketball player should pay attention to. Work. Just work. The best way for you to gain footing when you're in a shooting slump is to shoot the damn basketball behind the scenes as much as you possibly can and derive confidence from that process. Go into that next above the break 3 that you take off of that Chicago action out of the right corner. As you're rising up, thinking in the back of your head, I made this shot 100 times this morning. I made it 100 more times yesterday. I made 500 other threes from other spots of the floor over the last couple of days. When you feel that confidence, it helps you think more about the fact that you've been making this shot nonstop for the last 2 days, instead of the fact that you missed 4 of them 2 days earlier when you were playing in Minnesota. right? Like you need to gain confidence from your work. It's like that famous line from Carmelo Anthony in the commercial. Why wouldn't I want the last shot when I know I've already taken it? And it shows him doing the little drill with the where he's shooting the one dribble pull up at the elbow in a gym by himself. And that's the truth. That's like, I had a really, really bad shooting slump my third year in college. I was a very streaky shooter when I was in college because I had a lot of issues with my form that I hadn't worked out yet. And my second year in conference play, I shot the ball super well. Shot like just the shade under 50% on pretty good volume for the entire conference play season in the spring. And then I went to an NAIA school the next season, and my role changed. I started getting some different shots, and I shot terribly. And I had a stretch in the non-conference play at the beginning of the season where I missed 22 straight threes. And I never got to the point where I shot the ball great that year, but I did shoot the ball better in the second half of the season. I was in like the mid-30s during conference play. And a big part of that was I was obsessively working behind the scenes because I fucking hated being a terrible shooter. I was like, I gotta fucking figure this shit out. Like it agonizes you, and you have to confront it with work. It's the only way to work through this kind of thing. The second thing that I would say, I also think a great strategy to get out of slumps is to focus on making winning plays to build confidence. And this is where LeBron being such a big athlete is such an advantage. Like there was a play in the Minnesota game last night where he got inside position on a rebound against Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and he got an offensive rebound putback. And it's like, that's worth just as many points as him running a well-executed Spain pick and roll where the threat of his shot forces the guy to chase over the top and he gets downhill and he dunks the ball. Right? That's the same points. If anything, it's more valuable because you turned a miss into points on an offensive rebound. You turn bad offense into good offense. When you make a good play like that, it feeds you a little bit of confidence. And so by focusing on the defensive end, grabbing key defensive rebounds, making key rotations, engagement in terms of your screening and crashing on the offensive end, to just try to squeeze out every little bit of winning basketball you can out of your natural gifts that are not dependent on making shots, that will build confidence and that will bring him out of this. For the record, I'm not saying this stuff is some sort of like tip for LeBron. He knows this shit. I was like thinking about this last night. Like, a lot of people are ready to be done with LeBron in terms of like him being washed, right? And if I know anything about LeBron, I know that his actual response is going to be, he's going to be profoundly irritated by how poorly he's playing, and he's going to work obsessively to try to fix it. Does that mean he's going to get back to the level that he was at the tail end of last season? I don't know. That was pretty damn high level. That might have been the last great chance that the Lakers had. Well, it was when LeBron and AD were at the level they were last year. Maybe. But I do think LeBron is going to get much, much better over the course of this season. I think he's going to find a way out of this stretch. The Emirates NBA Cup is here, and you can win big getting in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Who will win this year? We'll find out soon, but there's sure to be rim-rattling slams and no-look passes that bring the crowd to their feet. Get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. The New York Knicks are currently the favorite to win the NBA Cup at plus 450. First time, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. That's code HOOPS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. To make a long story short with the LeBron stuff, though, as it pertains to what's wrong with the Lakers now, he took over a larger portion of the offensive load while playing the worst basketball he's played in over 2 decades. And that's going to nuke just about any offense. But there are some other issues with the offense. Other than D'Lo, every other Laker offensive player is kind of in a little slump of their own. Like, D'Lo's gaining steam. They would have gotten blown out in that first half last night if not for him. He had 15-plus points in 4 straight games. He's 12 for 26 from 3 in those games. That's 46% on 6 attempts per game. D'Lo's getting out of his slump that he was in to start the year. But here's some other guys in their stats over the 2 and 5 stretch. AD, 22 points per game, 49% from the field, 23% from three. That's just bad for AD. Austin Reeves, 13 points per game, 41% from the field, 31% from three, almost as many turnovers as assists. Austin's been down for the most part this year. I don't know if he's dealing with some stuff physically, but there have been some really big games for Austin, but he hasn't been playing like the Austin Reeves that we've grown accustomed to, right? Dalton Knecht, 12 points per game, 33% from three on 7 attempts per game during the 2 and 5 stretch. Teams are starting to guard him more aggressively. I watched Minnesota do a lot of top blocking last night, denying, face guarding off the ball. These are the types of aggressive coverages that good shooters will get, and he's going to continue to see them. It's on JJ Redick to try to turn that into opportunities to get him free anyway, and to weaponize that attention to help the rest of the offense. Getting him out in transition will help more. Like transition is where there's chaos and guys can get open. And then 2, using him as a screener more. JJ already knows that stuff. I don't have to teach him. I'm sure he's working on that stuff with his staff as we speak. Rui Hachimura, 11 points per game, 32% from three over the stretch. Max Christie, 24% from three over the stretch. That's the big one. Like the whole team is in a shooting slump. They're just 30% from three over the 2 and 5 stretch. Just 29th in the NBA over that span. It's also important to mention what I talked about after the Suns-Lakers game, if you guys remember. When your stars aren't playing well, it creates fewer advantages for your lesser players. When your lesser players are playing with less of an advantage, it exposes them for having lesser abilities. That's just the way basketball works, especially against good teams. Like a lot of Laker detractors have rightfully pointed out that the Lakers have pretty bad splits against good and bad teams this year, and they do. They're 7-1 against teams that are below 500, 5-8 against teams that are 500 or better. But the thing is you're going to struggle to beat good teams in this league if your stars don't play well. Like that's less to me about like the Lakers roster. Like I think the Lakers won 17 games against teams that were 500 or better last year, tied the Celtics for the most in the NBA. Or excuse me, they won 17 games against teams that were in the top 10 in point differential, according to Cleaning the Glass, which was tied for the Celtics for the top of the league. Okay. The Lakers were fine against good teams last year, even with their roster limitations. Not good enough to win the title or anything, but they did well. The Lakers can beat good teams at a small rate above 500, but not when LeBron's playing this bad, and not when AD is not contributing the way that he did to start the year. Now, one other thing I want to point out before we go big picture. This has been a tough stretch of schedule for the Lakers. Last night was their 5th game in 7 nights. 4 of those 5 games were on the road. Both of their back-to-backs were on the road, which means they had to get on a plane that night. 4 of the 5 teams they played were over 500. And several guys for their important guys within their rotation have missed time. D'Lo missed a game. Austin missed 2 games. Rui missed a game. They had to play Armel Traore for 4 of those games. So what's wrong with the Lakers? It's a combination of factors. They refocused on defense, which led to AD devoting more energy in that direction instead of offense, where he had been amazing. The AD shift came with some matchup and injury stuff with the guards that forced LeBron James to take more of an ultra-high usage role. And LeBron has played the worst stretch of basketball he's played in over 2 decades. That poor play from LeBron has made life harder on every other Laker, and they have collectively entered into a shooting slump. And it all took place during one of the toughest stretches on the schedule that they will face all year that caused them to drop a bunch of games. So how do I feel about this team moving forward? More or less exactly how I felt before the season. I think LeBron will play much, much better in the long run. I do think they'll get AD back involved in the offense. The rest of the roster will benefit from LeBron and AD playing better, which will allow them to play better. And they'll look like the Lakers they have looked like for the better part of a year now. In the big picture, I still think they're way too unathletic on the perimeter to win 4 playoff rounds. If they bring in that athleticism through the trade market, specifically at the 2 and 3, it will make life easier on LeBron, AD, and Austin on the defensive end of the floor so that they can play at their best on the offensive end of the floor, which is their pathway to becoming a team with 2 elite units, which is what they need. Right now, they're an elite offense that's playing really poorly on offense, but that's what this roster is. It's an elite offensive roster and a bad defensive roster. But they've got some good defensive players, namely Anthony Davis as an anchor, to where if they can bring in a 2 and a 3 that are competent two-way players, suddenly they could be a team that is top 10 in, top 5 in offense and top 15 in defense. That's a pathway for them. But right now, they don't have those players. It's all theoretical. So it's all about, like, again, as I kind of process where I'm at with the Lakers overall, it's still exactly where I was before the season, which is if they make the right trade, I think they'll be fine. I've talked about this before with so many other teams around the league, but like sometimes as an NBA team in an 82 game regular season, the job is to survive and to extend out your good stretches as long as possible and to dig your way out of your bad stretches as fast as possible. Every NBA team is going to have 3 or 4 stretches where they're just not playing very well for various reasons. We talked about it with the Lakers, right? One of your stars is playing really poorly. Your other star's kind of playing poorly. Schedule's really tough. Role players all go into a shooting slump. You're going to drop some games. That's going to happen to other teams around the league. It's just about digging your way out of it. The Lakers' schedule does lighten up a little bit from here. They have no back-to-backs until January, and their next 6 games are all against teams that are currently either 500 or worse. Now, all of them are capable of beating the Lakers. The Hawks are capable of beating the Lakers. The Pistons are capable of beating the Lakers. The Heat are capable of beating the Lakers. The Kings are capable of beating the Lakers. So they could just as easily drop a bunch of these games. But if they play better basketball, if LeBron gets back to form, they should be able to get back on track. These are winnable games for them over the course of the next couple of weeks. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting me and supporting the show. Got a jam-packed slate tonight. We're going to hit a bunch of teams and a bunch of games and some film tomorrow. I will see you guys then.